One of Scott Morrison's closest cabinet colleagues has levelled stark criticism at the former Prime Minister, calling his secret appointment to those ministries during the COVID-19 crisis an extreme overreach. Former Treasurer Josh Frydenberg's comments come as the long-awaited report into Mr Morrison's secret self-appointments is set to be handed over later today. Former High Court Justice Virginia Bell has been investigating how Mr Morrison jointly controlled the health, finance, Treasury, Home Affairs and industry portfolios. It is going to be a big story today. Jane Norman is across all the details for us at Parliament House. Jane, good morning. So what has Josh Frydenberg had to say?
Yeah, well, his first comments, Michael, since this saga came to light, and he has not held back. He's described this revelation as wrong, profoundly disappointing, and in his words, extreme overreach. The fact that Scott Morrison secretly swore himself into multiple portfolios during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, Josh Frydenberg has spoken to veteran journalist Nikki Sava for her book Bulldozed, and an extract of that has been published today in the Nine papers, and that's where these comments are coming from. Mr Frydenberg says that he was loyal to a fault to his leader. We know that they were very close. They actually lived together for a time at the Lodge during the pandemic. And Mr Frydenberg, in his view, says there was simply no reason for Scott Morrison to take on the Treasury portfolio. So his comments come on the very day that former High Court Justice Virginia Bell is set to hand down the findings of her 3-month inquiry into Scott Morrison's secret ministries. Anthony Albanese asked Virginia Bell to conduct this inquiry to figure out sort of how, why and any ramifications from Scott Morrison's decision to acquire these extra portfolios, largely without the knowledge of any of the ministers involved. Josh Frydenberg knew that Scott Morrison had sworn himself into the health portfolio at the start of 2020, but over the next 12 to 14 months, we now know he took on about 4 or 5 more. So it wasn't just Josh Frydenberg, though, who's spoken out today. The former Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews has also taken aim at Mr Morrison. She said had ministers known back then what Scott Morrison was up to, they would have demanded he revoke the portfolios or potentially face a leadership challenge. But ultimately, she says what he's done is he's diminished the coalition's work during the COVID-19 crisis.
So, Jane, what are we expecting this report to find?
Yeah, well, if we look at previous comments and conclusions about this, early this year, Solicitor General Stephen Donoghue concluded that Morrison had actually been validly sworn into these portfolios, that there was no breach of the law. But in the Solicitor General's view, what Morrison had done was fundamentally undermine the principles of responsible government by keeping these secret portfolios secret. So if Virginia Bell agrees with that conclusion, what it's likely that we'll see, or what is probable, is that there might be some recommendations that go to strengthening the transparency of the process of appointments, fixing up any kind of loopholes, because it should be noted the Governor-General knew that Scott Morrison had been sworn into these portfolios, yet the ministers affected didn't. The Parliament didn't. The voters didn't. And so in terms of his limited public comments on this issue, Scott Morrison has very much defended his actions, saying that it was a prudent measure to take in an unprecedented crisis. But certainly the picture that this extract from Nikki Sava's book paints is one of a man who was under immense pressure, who was isolated and who was really mistrustful of those around him.
Jane Norman at Parliament House, thank you.